Hey, welcome to the 147th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Paul Kim, Sarah M. Bimji, and Lior Shemish. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Enlow. Today we are connecting from Russia. I am on my job where I'm making those cat food commercials in Russia, so I'm recording from my hotel room as we speak. It's at 11 o'clock my time. It's dark out. It's snowy. It's literally 8 degrees outside.
And it's noon my time.
And it is noon.
It's freezing cold here, too. It's like 67 degrees right now.
Let's hop into it. I think this is a fun opportunity for us to talk about travel shoots and just kind of the weird, small little things that change when you go to a new place that's unfamiliar to you. And, hopefully we can impart some tips and tricks and just general experience about shooting in a different place, whether that's a town away or halfway across the world.
Right, and I have to give a quick disclaimer. I'm probably going to make a lot of bad jokes about Russia during this episode based on almost zero knowledge of the country or the people, so I apologize in advance. But so with that, I want to say it's cool that we are doing this episode because I feel like usually we're a little cagey with the details of our shoots because we don't want to get in trouble from the productions we're working with.
A little KGB even.
Yes, good one.
Beat you to the punch there,
Good one, Oren. But now because you're working in Russia and everything is censored by the government, they can probably not listen to this podcast, and you can just spill all the beans and give us all your true complaints about the shoot.
Well, I don't know. So we haven't shot yet. It's 2 different spots, so one for one brand and one for another, and so I've had one of my pre-production meetings. The next one is tomorrow in a couple hours, actually. So.
Oh, cool. But before we get into that, I'm wondering, I heard that for them, the name of our podcast is just how you solve the problem with anyone you don't like.
I don't think that's how it works. Everyone has been excited to talk to Americans and curious and open-minded, and most people's English is astonishingly good. There are English menus at most restaurants. There's at least one waiter at most places that can speak English, at least communicate with you enough to get through
to extract some top secret information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what's your experience with political stuff? Are they bringing it up at all? Or asking you your opinion?
No. And it's funny. There was one moment when I was in one of the cats' hotel rooms. Yes, I said because there are 2 hotel rooms filled with cats because this is a cat food commercial.
For the cat actors on your shoot.
Exactly.
It's not weird. They're working, okay?
Yeah, sure. That's
it's
true.
Not just a room of cats.
And I was talking to the cat trainer, and her TV was on, and Trump was giving a speech about the shutdown, basically. And I kind of my attention was averted, and because I haven't been following things as closely as I'd like. So that was kind of a small opportunity for them to kind of see how I felt. In no terms were they what do you think of your president? But I could tell they were curious about my attitude towards him, basically.
Well, let's get into it. What's the experience? How many days are you shooting?
We're shooting 2 days.
And how many spots?
2 spots. Well, 2 spots plus one little 5-second tag. So really, yeah, 1 per day. We have 2 human actors and 2 different breeds of cats. So I have 4 cats for 1 spot, all of which basically stunt double for each other, and then 3 cats for the other spot, which stunt double for each other.
And what do you mean by stunt double for each other?
Basically,
because you can only use them for a few hours?
You can only use them for a few hours, and they're if one doesn't cooperate, I can't convince the cat to cooperate beyond a certain point. There's only so many things you can do to try to get it to
right. You can only do the trick. So many mice.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we did. There's a moment where we need the cat to kind of stalk, to kind of crouch down and, as though it's about to pounce on something.
Mm-hmm.
And per the trainer's advice, we bought a bird, a small bird to catch the attention of the cat in case we can't get it to pay attention because of, through any other sort of form. We'll have a bird in a cage that it will hear and pay attention to, basically.
Cool. And in Russia, they sell birds at Toys R Us, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're in Moscow also, so it's very metropolitan. It's kind of everything is weirdly high class here. Like
Right. I saw
the
the arcade machines you posted on Instagram. It looked really, really modern.
Oren's referring to, I went to the Soviet arcade, like a
Museum?
vintage arcade museum. Yeah, it's not. It's the closest they have to a barcade, basically. But what's incredible about them is that they're all Soviet era arcade machines, so they are all very old and crappy, or they seem very old and crappy. They seem like if Pong was at at an arcade, and they were on machines, but they're all from like the late 80s, early 90s. So we were all playing Super Nintendo and like, Mario and stuff. And these games they seem ancient and like they're manufactured with the same sort of aesthetic as like a bulldozer. They're
Right.
very clunky. Yeah. Anyway,
You're shooting 2.5 spots over the course of 2 days with all these cats. And then are you shooting on a soundstage?
we're shooting on a soundstage. It's a full set build.
What's the set?
So we are building a set that's basically a kitchen and a big loft style like living room with a fireplace and a balcony and a set of stairs and then another bedroom that's an apartment basically.
And are you allowed to have that fire lit?
Yes. Yes.
Like not without any fire marshals or any of that stuff? Or,
I haven't what's fascinating about this shoot is that normally when you're in a meeting with a bunch of producers and something comes up, there'll be a moment where they kind of maybe don't necessarily want to have a conversation in front of you, where they would kind of sidebar or like they talk about it later, or maybe they email each other or something like that. Or sometimes they'll just have it in front of you and then you kind of like interject your 2 cents and they wish that they hadn't said anything in front of you. We've all had those moments where,
right.
There's just logistics to talk through. In my case, those conversations happen right in front of me in Russian, and I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, I've actually, oddly enough, in my life, I've had a lot of that interaction where people are speaking like a different language next to you. My father, he lives in Israel, and he just like is way more comfortable speaking Hebrew. So whenever he's with me, he's always speaking Hebrew, and I'm always like answering him in English so that everyone around me doesn't think we're talking about them. I mean, he'll usually just say like, how much tip should I leave? 0? Something like that. Not something private at all. But yeah, I totally get it. And I have to I feel like I've spent many years of my life telling people like, don't be offended by the fact that we're speaking another language next to you.
Right.
But I'm sure it's hard, especially when they are looking at you and laughing and pointing.
Yeah, sure. Which, look, I've grown up with that my whole life. But no, seriously, it's more that, you're tracking things, and I have a translator with me, and so, people are pretty good about kind of catching me up to speed when, maybe a conversation has gone off the rails. And there's different levels of English ability in the group, so a lot of my team is, like I mentioned before, pretty darn competent.
Right.
My
and
joke
do you
is, of
trust
course,
your translator? Do you
I do, yeah. She is also my first AD, so she is intimately aware of the
mechanics of
the
film
mechanics
production?
and things. So I think she will fill in some gaps. I think like there will be times where my response will be something short, and then she'll respond with something longer than what I just said. But from what I can tell, it's more just kind of, filling in gaps here and there. It's a unique situation for sure. But what's maybe a challenge about it is that for every one of those conversations where a producer would rather not have it in front of me, 1 in 5 of them, it's actually really handy for me to be there because I can, help alleviate some questions or maybe like circumvent something that maybe is harder than it needs to be. So for instance, there was one conversation in the middle of a marathon meeting. I've been in a lot of meetings because there's a lot of different mouths to feed on these jobs, and it's 2 separate sets of agency producers. So it's just a lot.
One for each commercial?
One for each commercial, which is because they're 2 different brands. So whereas normally you'd have one team and so you can kind of get everything done all at once together, and certain things are true for both spots, it's 2 different jobs basically at the same time. But so basically we're in the middle of a long meeting, and there was a 10-minute conversation in Russian where finally I realized, there's a slight misunderstanding, and if it had been in English, I would have said, well, we'll just scoot that cabinet 6 inches.
Right.
And once I kind of stepped in and was like, hey, is this what we're talking about? Here's the solution. They were like, oh, you're right, and moved on. But like, because I can't process all of the things that are happening all at once in those circumstances, it makes it a little harder to implement easy solutions when there are some, you know.
Well, let me ask you a little bit like about the role of a director as seen in kind of that Moscow system. Like how much involvement did you have in the set build, for instance?
I was very involved. Yeah, I was very involved. Less in the actual construction, but I had SketchUps. I had him bring paint swatches and examples of like the floor samples and all of that stuff. And to be honest, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the agency really likes to be involved with those things as well. And so it's not just me that needs to be a part of those conversations, but also like with any commercial, and maybe more with this one where the agency is local and has worked with a lot of these people before. They are very involved with what their decisions, what they want to see on screen, basically, and what feels premium or what a Russian would think relative to what an American would think, and so in that way, it's very specific. Frankly, because it's a build, also you can pick every single aspect of it. You know, we're literally like we're looking at paint, we're looking at materials, we're looking at the floor, we're like picking out the cabinets, we're picking out the tiles, we're picking out every single piece of furniture.
Are there windows with like translates and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, we picked the backlight for the translate.
And a translate, for those that don't know, is just like a gigantic printed picture of a city that you put outside of a set window. I think the company is called Translate, but I think the name comes from the idea that you can light it from behind. It's semi-transparent. And whether it's a night scene or a daytime scene, it glows and it has that feeling of being exterior. I mean, as long as you don't get too close to it and hopefully it's out of focus and all of that junk.
Right.
And usually you'll have like a greens team, like the people in the art department with the plants and stuff, putting things closer to the window so you don't notice
you kind of
the
obscure it a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
But they're kind of one of the coolest parts of a soundstage because it's literally like a 100-foot wide picture of a city or something.
Ours is 36 meters.
Yeah, like 100, more than 100 feet. That's cool. Have you ever done a set build this big?
Not this big, no.
Even for Whiskas, it was maybe as many rooms, but on a much smaller scale, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, it was more rooms, but they were small enough that I would be flopping them, you know. So we would kind of bounce back and forth between the two builds.
And so do you feel like that money is going farther in Russia? Like, is it that you have a bigger budget that you get to do this big of a set build, or that it's just like in Russia, like I've heard in other countries, like in China, like people, you know, getting like 100 people to do something isn't nearly as hard as it is in the US.
You know, it's a little hard for me to tell because budgets haven't been a big topic of conversation. You know, like they haven't. The only time we've been like, we don't have the money to do this is when it's like, well, should we bring 30 dresses to the fitting? They're like, no,
right,
because that's too many, you know. But otherwise, there have been considerations here and there, but for the most part, it's been pretty open, and it's a little hard for me to tell why that is exactly. But I think it's probably a combination of labor being maybe a little bit cheaper, and also it being, you know, a big enough brand and a big enough campaign that, you know, they're used to spending it, I think, a little bit more.
Right. And are these, like, do they do 30-second TV spots there? Is that the same format as us?
So what's funny about these is that they are digital. And so I've got a 20-second spot and a 30-second spot and a 5-second spot.
I've actually recently, you know, I've done some like regional TV broadcast spots and they needed to come in at 24 seconds because they have a 6-second dealer card.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, let's say it's something that, you know, they're selling in a few different regions. Like
sure,
it's a car commercial.
Spot.
Yeah. The last 6 seconds will be like $2.99 a month at, you know, Chevy Hills Honda. Well, so, and when is your shoot? How many days from now?
It's 2 days from now, basically. Okay. So I have a pre-PM and recce tomorrow, and then another
pre-PM. Is that a pre-production meeting?
So yeah. PPM they call pre-production meetings, but we had pre-PPMs and pre-PPMs which was kind of a new thing for me because we had to just kind of get so many things in line and aligned with the agency before we present to clients. So the PPM is, here we are, this is the plan, everyone loves it, we're all so excited, this is how it's going to go down to the letter. Basically.
Joke in Russian. Everyone laughs except for Matt. Matt smiles.
To be honest, the PPM, which is almost always my favorite meeting, was the only one that was 100% in English, and it definitely went the best for me. And I was like, oh, I knew every single thing that was said in this meeting.
Right.
No wonder I enjoyed it.
What are you presenting at these meetings? Like the sets, the cast, the
The
script?
whole thing. Yeah. So in this case, we did a pre-PPM because we needed the cast to be pre-approved so that our actors could actually get to know the cats, because anything you can do to make the cats feel at ease in advance of the shoot, especially if they're going to be acting opposite someone, is valuable so that there's just one less variable to worry about, basically. So we introduced the cats to the actors earlier in the day, so we had a earlier production meeting with a client just to talk about the cast. But otherwise, normally you go through the cast, you go through the storyboards, I walk through every single beat, they tell me what they like and maybe what they're a little apprehensive about, and make sure that the product shot looks great and the voiceover's timed out right and all of that stuff. And then we go through every single prop, we go through artist mock-ups of all of the sets, we go through any of the specific actuals that we have pulled, and then
And when you say that, you mean like, here's a couch that we are renting.
Here's the couch that we've selected.
A photo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, correct.
And wardrobe.
Yeah.
And parking for the client.
There's not so much conversation about parking or things like that. Also because the client in this case typically isn't used to going, because it's oftentimes they're shooting in other locations, but because this one is here in Moscow, they're planning on coming to the set for kind of the first time, I think, for them in a while. So they're very excited.
Oh, cool. And the parking isn't an issue because most people are traveling around in Rocketeer jetpacks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing people don't talk about here, but like everyone can fly, and like we're all just like drunk on vodka and caviar. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I'm very familiar with that. Okay, so are you excited? What else?
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm trying to think through all of the things that are unique and different. I think that it's been more meetings, but I think the thing that's been a bit of a comfort and is funny is that the archetypes of the people who work at these places all are relatively consistent. Like the personality type that becomes an EP or becomes a coordinator or, any other crew position, they are relatively consistent. There's a type to them, and so whether you're in Russia or somewhere else, you kind of have a shorthand with people in that way. And also the production companies and the agencies and all of these places, they're all still very familiar. So like the production company is still in a cool industrial space, and it's got some funky props from previous shoots, and there's a couple cute dogs walking around, and there's a funky, sofa, and there's a ping pong table.
Yeah, I get it. They copy the production design from like the latest episode of Ally McBeal or whatever just came out over there, right?
You know what is for real though? A lot of their bathrooms are mixed sex. So you just go into the water closet and there's just a bunch of stalls, just like in Ally McBeal. And frankly, I think it's a better system.
Cool. Good to know. Well, so you are working with a new DP. You've never worked with him before, and he is from England?
That is correct, yes. Yeah, but we have been pals for a while.
Okay.
So we knew each other before that. We'd kind of interviewed on a few jobs. We'd gotten a couple of coffees together. But he has worked in Moscow a handful of times.
Okay, so is that helpful?
I think it was mostly helpful in selling him to everybody else. And I think that, look, I've shot in New York a handful of times or Atlanta a handful of times. Does that mean that I'm going to be able to call in favors for Atlanta crew or New York crew? Like, maybe not. But, like, for the most part...
Well, not favors. Just knowing how things work in a different place makes a difference, especially on the technical side. Like even in England versus the U.S., there's a difference between like who all is handling like the lights and the grip equipment and how things
Sure,
break
that is
down,
true.
and even
Yeah,
titles.
that's true. That's true. There is a slight difference in that way, but for the most part, it's just like, hey, let's make sure these certain crew members speak like really fluent English,
Yeah,
and then
right.
that's kind of the gist in a lot of ways. I think it's more like, are you used to travel? I think that's kind of the bigger question in general. So like, if you've shot in Moscow, do I think you could do a great job shooting in Japan? Yeah, probably. Like, I think there are people who have a knack for, breaking down language barriers, or a quick study on the key terminology that you need. Like, whenever you're traveling, it's always handy to have a few phrases, right? And there are oftentimes you can buy a little map that's got the key phrases on there for you.
Are you guys shooting on any sort of crazy Russian lenses?
We are not. No, we're shooting on. I think like Zeiss or something standard. Something you're like, oh, of
Master
course.
primes.
Yeah. I think so. But we are shooting on Phantom, which will be exciting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
For the whole thing?
For one of the spots, the majority of it will be Phantom.
Oh, cool. Like super slow-mo?
Super slow-mo, yeah, because it's a shot. It's basically as if a cat is an airplane as it jumps onto a bed. So, yeah, we're shooting, I think, probably in the neighborhood of 600 frames a second. So it's not cranking on a Phantom the way that you could. It's not totally putting it through its paces, but it's faster than an Alexa would shoot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool you get to have a fire on set. I had to shoot last week, and I wanted to have a candle, and they were like, no.
Yeah, fun when it's like, like everyone's lit a candle before.
Yeah, it's like if we had $0, there would be 100 candles here. But because we have a little bit of a budget, we are not allowed to do anything. I mean, people are allowed to smoke right outside the stage, but you can't have like a tiny candle on.
Right.
Or lit. Well, I want to read you an email I got 4 days ago.
Oh, good. Yeah, please.
Hi, Oren. My name is Irene Timlina. I produce and represent directors for Russia and Ukraine. You were recommended by David Ward, a listener and friend of ours. Wanted to send you the board for Kazakhstan, but to be shot in Kiev with Kiev Production Company. You're the absolute perfect fit for this, and I would like to present you for this tomorrow if you're going to give me the green light. Shoot sometime mid-February. The job is going to be shot in Ukraine. Can you kindly let me know if you're interested ASAP, so I have an answer from you in the morning or so. Here are the boards. Looking forward to hearing from you. Then I get an email from David Ward.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like it's going to spiral into insanity, but it doesn't. I apologize.
Oh. Yeah, the way you're building this up.
He writes, hey, dude, I had a random person reach out to me through my website about directing work in Russia and Ukraine. I looked them up and found they're in LinkedIn with the same website listed and checked out their website, and it does seem legit. I checked out the boards, their VFX heavy superhero stuff that I'm not really a good fit for, but I gave her your website. So if someone reached out from Russia, that's why. And then he said, is this a normal occurrence? Have you heard of any directors doing commercial work in Russia? And he said that he asked her that, and she wrote back saying, there's a huge demand in comedy and comic directors for majority of clients. And then David says, just trying to figure out if it's a real directing opportunity or someone trying to harvest my organs. So I tell Irene, like, yeah, I'm willing to listen. And the boards are pretty insane. After we basically talk about the rate and all that stuff, she says to me, what do you think of representation in Russia? It's a massive market with same chain of international clients and a lot of work. I mean, if Anonymous does not claim that territory and you're on your own to decide, which I already had told her that I'm not with them commercially.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, then she says, would be cool if you could be on my site and then exposed to all Russian agencies and production companies. Your style of work is very much what the market itself now is hungry for. So all should be great. So the reason I bring this up...
I can't... Listen, everyone at home, this is the first Orange brought. We haven't talked very much. So this is incredible.
Well, right. I wanted to save it for the podcast because the last podcast we recorded, you said something along the lines of, I was just like flabbergasted by how you got this job directing these cat food commercials in Russia. I, like David, also suspected foul play here. And you said...
You were sure I was going to get my organs harvested. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said, well, people like randomly reach out to you and email you about jobs sometimes. And I said, No, that absolutely never happens to me. And this is just insane. And then lo and behold, a few days later, I get that email. So anyway, you are the guinea pig for shooting in that part of the world. So
Yeah.
if you make it back alive, then I'll say I'm interested.
Well, unless the plane crashes or something, I'm gonna make it back alive.
Oh, yeah,
And I'm
Kara
enjoying
said,
myself.
my wife is like, don't they just like randomly shoot planes down out of the sky over there? I was like, it just happened once.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think because, I've thought about it a lot, obviously. Like, I traveled here with my wife. There is a lot of anxiety. My parents were, I think, worried, right? And to me, it feels like, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but it feels like if you're, you know, traveling like if you were traveling from Russia to the United States and you were afraid of an earthquake, a big hole opening up and your building falling into the ground because Los Angeles is where earthquakes are. It's not that you shouldn't be afraid of that because that is a legitimate thing that does actually sort of happen. My wife lived through the Northridge quake of '94. Earthquakes are real and they're dangerous and they're not to be taken lightly, but it's not like that's a thing you need to actively be vigilant against in the same way. And so Moscow is, from what I can tell, a pretty safe city. It's very metropolitan, and
How's the food?
so this is interesting, actually. So the US dollar is pretty strong right now. And so it doesn't cost much to go out to eat, and you still have a per diem that's in US dollars. So, like, you have like more money than I think you would typically spend on yourself per day out, right? Plus, oftentimes food is taken care of you, like when you're at a meeting or something like that. They just put out some food and you kind of just have at it. So, and because my wife is here and the evenings are when we mostly have our free time, we'll go out to a nice dinner. So we went to White Rabbit, which is the 15th best restaurant in the world.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
There's a Chef's Table episode on it, and the episode is quite good actually. But it's like you're dining on the top of a skyscraper with this giant atrium, and you're having all sorts of crazy food, and it's by this world class chef, and all of that. So that's like the peak. That's you know arguably the very best restaurant in Russia, and you're spending $200 for the two of you, which is a lot of money, but not for the best meal of your life, right?
Right.
But then there's a lot of other very high class.
Right, but in terms of the food itself, like, are you there's a ton of options for you and stuff.
So it
That's a
is a little
vegetarian.
tricky. As a vegetarian, it is tricky. So I have been eating fish,
Mm.
um,
And it's
and it
delicious,
is,
right?
yeah, of course. I mean, so is steak. That's never been the question. It's not is meat good. It's like is it moral? It's the harder part. So I've been eating fish when I have to. Um, but what's weird is that we've been eating at fancy restaurants, and it's kind of hard to find a more casual place, frankly. Like the casual places are maybe they're less English friendly or aren't around as much. And so we don't really have the chance to like I don't have a kitchen or anything. I'd rather just like make myself some oatmeal
Right.
than go to Cafe Pushkin
Right.
or wherever.
Yeah, I've never been to Russia, but I've been to a few like Russian birthday parties in the
Hmm.
US, and they are have the most insane food spreads, like at like kind of true Russian restaurants. Like they're
Hmm.
just bringing unlimited amounts of like entire
Like
fish and
sure, and like a lot of
sauces and caviar
dumplings
and
and
yeah.
cat. Yeah, yeah.
Do you feel like
Um,
there's a big separation between like the wealthy people and the poor people?
it's hard to tell because everyone's bundled up. So you can tell if a rich lady is walking by in like furs. But
Hmm.
also um, culturally, it's like a very opulent style right now. The malls are very blinged out. It's like you're in Beverly Hills all over the place.
Right, like
And
diamond
so,
encrusted things, but that like crazy sunglasses and
well, not the sunglasses because there's not enough sun to need to block
oh
it out
right.
right now. We're getting like 6 or 8 hours of sunlight, something like that. And it's pretty cloudy most of the time as well. Today was sunny, but it still snows most days also. But also, again, it's like hard to tell because everyone's bundled up and things. And when you're with an ad agency, they are cool looking. They're not
they're like the hip
flashy. Yeah. They're hip and young and like have cool taste and things. So what do you think about this Ukraine job, though? Are you gonna?
I told her I'm interested. I told her my rate, which I set to be pretty much the same thing you told your people. And she was like, "Oh, that's kind of too much." And I was like, "Well, make me like a counteroffer," and she did. And it was not that much less. And so I was like, "Yeah, let's go with that." And then I haven't heard since then. That was like 2 days ago. It is. I mean, do you guys have weekends and stuff over there?
Yes, we definitely. Yeah, people aren't working on the weekends necessarily. I worked through the weekend because of scheduling issues, basically. But yeah, for the most part, people are taking their weekends. And there's an 11-hour delay, so oftentimes you're getting emails. Either your team is staying up extra late to respond, like it's almost midnight right now for me. So most of your waking hours, you'll probably wake up to an email the next morning, basically.
Right. It's probably nice to wake up. Like, oh, I have all these great emails and not just like Pond 5 telling me about their new footage.
You should check out that footage, though. It's probably pretty good.
Yeah. Well, cool. I have not a lot of great updates.
Yeah, let's hear them, though.
Usually I would just tell Matt this personally, but now I'm just going to say them on the podcast for no good reason. I shot some promos for a Showtime show that has a new season coming up.
Oh, that's very cool. How did that go?
It was really fun. We had 3 actors from the show, and we shot a promo with each of them, and they're going to be on TV.
That's pretty excellent. How did that happen?
It was with this company that does a lot of promo, like EPK stuff, and they don't do a lot of scripted stuff. And there was a producer at the company that had worked with me before, and when they were looking for a director, they didn't know a ton of like scripted directors.
Right.
And one of the actors that we had to shoot was in North Carolina. So they needed 2 crews. So the producer that usually kind of directs things had to go there. And so they needed someone to run the show here. But I still like made the shot list for both shoots and did all that stuff. Yeah, it was cool. They had like, I hired no one. They had like a DP already. I got hired on a Sunday night for a shoot on Tuesday.
Yeah, cool though, man. That's awesome.
And so, yeah, it was really fun. And they paid me to be in on the edit, which usually is something I have to beg to be involved with. So, but it's funny because when I was there for the edit, they like just referred to me as a creative producer and not the director. On set, it was like they call me the director, but I think because they come from more of like this unscripted docu-style world, they have different titles. So anyway,
that makes sense.
And then in other news, not nearly as exciting as the way I said that is, we talked about wanting to join the DGA this year, and I'm up for 2 jobs right now. They're both crazy long shots, and I'm 99% chance I will get neither one of them, but they're both DGA jobs.
Yeah, man.
And
Congratulations.
I kind of had to like weasel my way into being up for them.
Are they through your reps, or how did you get these?
No, neither one is through my reps. Though I did mention to my commercial company, the Famous Group, that I want to try to get into the DGA. But did you know that there's a different rate for commercial directing than there is for film and TV?
Yeah, it's a little cheaper for commercials, and then it's prorated. So if you join the film or TV, then you're not paying the full rate of the TV.
Oh, right. But it's literally, so it's like $3,500 nice for commercials and like $12,000 for film and TV. So
exactly. So you get, but you get $3,500 off if you have already
if you're in as a commercial director. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So both of them, I was like, hey, I will pay to join, if I get the job. And I believe that one is a commercial and one is not a commercial, like a digital show. And
oh, nice, man. That's exciting.
Both of them, basically, my rate would just probably cover the joining. But anyway, so we'll see. I mean, like I said, they're both long shots.
Well, still, fingers crossed, man.
It's like kind of this combination of like the people they want not being available and me being like on the list, So, which is kind of what I'm hoping for. But who knows?
Yeah, but
Maybe I'll
that's how
be
it
in
goes.
Kiev directing water commercials, superhero-themed water commercials.
Man.
You never know.
Yeah, what a wild ride.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool. So when are you coming back? I feel like you've been gone for years.
it feels like I've been gone. I've been gone for a week, but I went to Palm Springs slightly before that, so that's part of it. I'll be back basically in February. Be back on the 30th.
Well, should we finish this off with, before we get to unpaid endorsements, maybe we'll read an iTunes review?
Yeah, let's do it. We've got a handful. Thanks everyone for all of these wonderful new iTunes reviews.
Gendraz says, Oren and Matt are both very open about their own experiences and ask the kind of questions that an aspiring director wants to hear. Listening to their enthusiastic discussions really motivates me to get back to work.
I'm excited that Jandras thinks that we are enthusiastic. That feels good.
Yeah, 2019. We're done.
Yeah.
Done with being bummed.
Mopey? Yeah, love it, love it. Awesome. Well, Jade Kai has something similar to say. Jade says, Oren and Matt are not only fun to listen to, they share a breadth of experience and knowledge that only come from those deep in the trenches and fighting the good fight. An incredible resource to filmmakers looking to be inspired to just shoot it. They also have an awesome network of guests, friends, and colleagues all willing to share their experience with the listeners. A must listen. Thanks, Jade. That's really nice.
I will admit that I do believe I know who Jade Kai is.
Oh, I see.
I think it might be a friend of ours that does listen to the podcast.
Good. Thanks, Jade.
But when
Extra
he or
shout out.
she says they have a network of guests and friends that are amazing, then she is one of them.
It's funny because I feel like it's maybe a little more touching when a friend decides to listen, because if you're friends with us and you hear us talk all the time, and it's just like it's easier to roll your eyes at us. Like when you're a little bit removed from our small circle, then I think that maybe it makes the show a little bit more fun to listen to. So
Yeah.
thanks for putting up with our bullshit, Jade.
Cool. Well, so finally we have a message from Zach Dalton. Love getting insight from these directors. Perfect for working filmmakers trying to navigate their journey through commercial and other work. And Zach also just followed me on Instagram, I noticed. So,
Oh, there you go.
mega fan. Just kidding. But thanks, Zach. That's awesome. Obviously, most of our listeners are filmmakers, but it's exciting when they just talk about it because, part of the show is about like directors just trying to talk to other directors, and that camaraderie, whether it's you and me or like people in the rest of the world, is pretty exciting for me.
Yeah.
So thanks,
Yeah,
Zach.
great. Thanks, everyone. Please do us a favor. If you want to hear your review read out loud on the show, we do our best to keep up with them. Go to Just Shoot It on iTunes and leave a review. It really does genuinely help the show grow. It is the thing that helps recommend our show to other people who would most likely like it. So do us a favor.
Cool. And we have a bunch of listener questions that we will answer in a future episode. So don't think we forgot about you, listener question people.
there.
And please, email us more of your thoughts and questions. And it's really awesome to hear the feedback.
Yeah. And also, you could always leave us a voicemail at 2626-SHOOT-1. It's really especially cool to hear your voices on the show.
Yeah, you can. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/justshootitpod. You can buy my wife's new novel. I'm just kidding. She doesn't have it.
Oh, man. I'd love to read your wife's new novel. That'd be great. There's this really annoying character named Oren.
Named Smat.
Yes, man.
Smat Menlo.
Yeah.
Let's maybe jump into some unpaid endorsements.
Unpaid endorsements.
Have we talked about VPNs before?
No, we haven't actually.
Yeah, so there's a bazillion VPNs. I just signed up for one called NordVPN, NORD-VPN, because my friend uses it. I don't know if it's any better or any worse than any other VPN, but it's pretty cheap. It was like $100 for 3 years of access. And what it does is it lets you connect to the internet from wherever you want to pretend to be from. So let's say you were in Russia and wanted to watch American Netflix, and it told you that you can't watch Netflix from that country. You can use the VPN to log into Netflix through a US server. So it's kind of like spoofing the system. I mean, it's a little hacking. If you were doing illegal things on the internet, I would highly recommend you use a VPN. But it just kind of lets you access things. Like if I want to watch Israeli videos or something that are only supposed to air in Israel, I could use the VPN to watch them. Anyway, Use them at your own risk. I mean, not that there's anything really too sketchy about them, but there are sketchy people that use them. So
Sure. I mean, there's also good reasons to use it, like, say, wanting to guarantee that you can access your Gmail in an area where it's not accessible, for instance.
Oh, for sure. And even if you pay for Netflix and you happen to be in Russia, you should, I think, still be able to watch Netflix, even though it won't pipe into Russia.
So you can, I can watch Netflix. We just watched that episode of Chef's Table, actually. But there are regional differences in terms of what is licensed here. So, like, for instance, we wanted to watch the new episode of The Good Place. But that, even though we were on Hulu, which is where we normally watch it, or on Amazon, we could watch it either place normally, because it's not here in Russia yet. It wasn't accessible to us. So
Right.
a VPN would help me route my Amazon through the US, for instance, so that you could watch it easier.
Yeah, totally. Well, so what do you got?
So mine actually is thematically tied. Phil Rosenthal, who is the host of Somebody Feed Phil, and the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond.
And also the creator of a documentary, Exporting Raymond, right? Or something like that?
Exactly. That's my endorsement, is Exporting Raymond. It's a movie, it's a documentary about him traveling to Russia to adapt Everybody Loves Raymond for a Russian audience, because they had a lot of success adapting The Nanny and a few other American shows. And Russia tended to be the keystone of a domino effect of other countries beginning to adapt those shows. So if Russia likes Everybody Loves Raymond, then Poland's going to call, and all sorts of other countries are going to call. And I think it's about Phil coming to Russia and trying to take his philosophies and ideas about the way comedy works and the way universal themes work, and adapt that to Russian sensibility. And it's great, and I never expected to relate to a documentary about adapting something to Russia so much, but it was especially enjoyable and comforting for us to watch.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I really wanted to see it. Where did you watch it?
On Amazon. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We rented it on Amazon, and it's a total delight. You know, it's like, it's rough around the edges. It's clearly just like, you know, a few people with cameras, but it's got the Phil sense of humor. We like Somebody Feed Phil, so like we were already kind of prone to like Phil. And get this, he stays in the same hotel we are staying in Russia.
Oh, wow. The one hotel Americans are allowed to stay in.
No, there's a bunch of like very fancy ones, and this one is not bad at all, but it is not iconic. It's not the Ritz or the Four Seasons or something, or the Hotel Ukraine, I guess, is like a big one.
Right.
It's not one of the big opulent ones. It's just like a regular, you know, a nice Holiday Inn or something, you know. There's nothing crazy about it. So it was really funny to see him in the lobby that we go through every day.
Right. That's awesome. Just on that tip there, I don't know if you know, but Iran had adapted Modern Family for their country. And the gay couple is obviously not a gay couple in their version, but it's like everything else is exactly the same. Like it's almost a shot-for-shot remake. Well, let's wrap things up. If you want to give us some feedback, please send us an email, justshootitpod@gmail.com. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/justshootitpod, which I desperately owe a newsletter to, and I will send that out this week. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram at @okaplan, right?
And
or am I Oren Kaplan?
You're O Kaplan, you got it right. And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow.
You can follow the podcast ever, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We would love to hear from you. And yeah, this episode was produced by Madeline Rosewatt. It was edited by Jay McAuliffe, and our webmaster, who I actually met in person all the way from Australia, is Ewan Williams, and he is a lovely person.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, and the music you're listening to is from the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar, and we will catch you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.